Welcome back to Talking Ball. It's Jack with JD, and this will be the final episode of the season on the Duke Basketball 2024-25 season, and we are going to review this season, talk about the highlights, the lowlights, but I don't think I could start this show, JD, without spending at least a minute, as painful as it is, going back to the Houston game. And the only thing I want to say, with a couple of days in between, I know there's a lot of people who've talked about, what Scheyer could have done, what more he should have done, etc. The only thing I want to say on that is I actually think it's not what more he should have done, but actually he could have done less. And I think him having running the offense, if you will, having them slow down the pace. And if you're gonna say the only thing he should have done, which would have been, instead of managing the offense, I think he should have kept up his substitutions like he did in the first half. Let guys like Gillis and Foster and even Evans get some more playing time. We can't see what you wrote there.
Can't see it. I wrote down substitutions.
That's it. To me, I think a lot of this is overcomplicating what happened there. And I just think substitutions, if that's it. And he doesn't, interfere with the offensive flow that the team had for the first 10 minutes of the second half. But all right, I got to move on. Anything you want to add there?
The only thing I'll do is end it on a high note. Sheyer's been there 3 years. His players respond to him really well. His first year, he makes it to the round of 32. His second year, he makes it to the Elite Eight. And his third year, he is in the Final Four. And things just didn't work out in that game. And boy, have people been picking it apart. I'd prefer to say each year that he's been coach, we've gotten further, and leave it at that. People like playing for him. And do you think there's anybody on that Duke team that is more upset than Jon Scheyer?
It's a very good question, actually. The first gut instinct was to say no, but then thinking about it, Scheyer. It's a good question, because Scheyer, of course, feels really bad for the players, and he understands, especially for Cooper, Khan, come on, Sion, and Mason, and we'll see about the rest. This was probably, if not definitely, for the last two, their last shot, and so he feels horrible for them, and I'm sure they feel really bad knowing that this was their last opportunity. So I'm just weighing those. I don't know. It's a good question. What do you guys think? Drop in the comments. Who do you think is hurting the most? And speaking of the comments, before we get formally into this show, first off, want to say thank you to a lot of you guys. I'm gonna read off a list here, JD. I'm gonna try to do it as quick as I can, and then we have one announcement to make, and then we're gonna get into the show. So, want to say thank you to Lawrence Freeman, Pay the Piper, Joe M, Lando Man, Vincent Muniz, Juice on 3, Ed Sessoms, A. Duke, Trav W12, Macaroni Daddy, William Shaler, Father Jacob Golden, Matthew Trom, Admissions GCAS, CJ Cav, Ryan Jones, Laura Markle. And if I didn't name you and you've been a part of this program, I apologize. I tried to get to as many people as I could. You guys have been awesome supporting the show and the program throughout the season. And hope to have you guys throughout the summer. And if not, please come back for the start of next season. We will be back.
Second, all you said, I think it was an unexpected surprise that when we got into this season and this venture, that there would be people commenting. And I I don't know these people. They were, other than, let's say, maybe the, Kentucky and Arizona fans that got, in friendly banter. These people, their comments were great. They spent the time to type something. You have something to react to. And so many of them commented, we're kind of like a family. And it was just a complete joy to share this experience this season, where I don't know, other than the back-to-back championships, I don't know that I've ever been so attached to a Duke team. And part of it is clearly what you and I, Jack, have been doing together, and the people we've been doing it with.
And the team itself. It was a special group of guys. And there's one name I did not mention, which was Wes, Midnight Assassin. Wes, if you're watching this, please reach out to me. My email is available. You should be able to find it in our I think it's like the About page on the channel, the home page, I should say. And we want to make sure we get you a scarf. So please reach out to me or drop your information in the comments below where I can reach out to you, and we'll make it happen. So with that being said, JD, you want to go into our player grades first? Or should we just talk about some of the general, highlights? And there weren't many, but there were a couple lowlights of the season. Where would you like to go?
I think we do the highlights and the low and the high points and the low points. One shining moment is not simply about the final game. It's about the whole tournament. And for us, it's about the whole year. So there were definitely a number of, and then it'll be easier for us to do what we want to do, which is we want to give a grade to each of the team. And we define that broadly of Duke. So,
all right. Well, since you said that, and you said, it starts with the beginning here, I'm going to go way back to the first exhibition game against Lincoln and Con Knippel's dunk when he dunked on some poor soul from Lincoln. That I think woke a lot of people up. Maybe, it's as to how good Con was going to be. We may have gone a little too far. I think we said he was going to be the leading scorer on this team. That's a freezing cold take for sure, considering Cooper Flagg was on the team. But, the first two games of the season, those exhibition games, you thought it could be possible. And then Cooper turned 18, took some shots back in Maine with his dad, and the rest was history. So that dunk from Con Knippel, that Lincoln game, man, that was awesome.
So I think when you started to say, I'm going to go all the way back, I thought you were going to go all the way back to when Cooper Flagg announced that he was coming to Duke. And I, of course, not being as well-versed as you go, there's been a lot of video about him, and he seems to have a lot of following and everything, but I didn't know as much as I should have about Cooper Flagg. And then as soon as it sunk in that he was going to be part of this year's team, the special nature of this year for me, having watched since 1978, so 47 years of Duke basketball, that something like this could be, like, wait a minute, we're going to get to watch, because we watch every game, this potentially once in a generational star. And so for me, it started really with Cooper Flagg announcing that he's coming to Duke. And then you're always so much better at explaining to me who came in through the transfer portal, who came in through other, drafted, recruits, and you go, here's why you're going to like them. And you've done that for me every year. Here's the strengths, the weaknesses, but here's why you're really going to like them. And when you put it all together for me, I was like looking at it going like, wow. I mean, why wouldn't you have the optimism that we could win it all?
And I guess if you're going to go back to Cooper, I guess I'll go back to the end of last season. And you think about all the guys who transferred out and the narrative that was portrayed about Duke basketball and Coach Scheyer, how he basically, the program was in major trouble. Everyone was, I think it was 7 guys transferred out. Only 2 guys returned. Yes, he's got a bunch of freshmen coming in, but they're freshmen. How good are they really? And what is the state of this Duke program? Are they going to be able to compete again this coming season? And getting, the 3 prominent transfers with Sion, who, until he was on the Duke radar, I'd never heard of. I know he had some good seasons at Tulane, but I wasn't watching Tulane basketball. I apologize. And obviously Mason Gillis and Malik Brown are much more familiar to me for different reasons. And so getting those 2 guys were big gets. And I thought, Malik was going to have to play power forward based off of, he's 6'8". He's not a big guy. And then, boy, was I wrong. And, there's a few times I want to talk about Malik, so I'll save some of that. But, masterful roster construction by Coach Scheyer. So give a big credit to him. I don't know what that means.
Hey.
Oh, well, we're supposed to wait for that, but all right.
But roster construction wasn't in what I thought our list was, but I would say at the very start of the season, pulling all the pieces together leads to what we'll get to later. Okay.
All right. So the con dunk. Let's see. I thought the Arizona road win at the start of the season was awesome, considering where Duke was, having lost. They had the 4 big non-conference games that they scheduled to start of the season. They lost their first 2, and those were definitely low lights. The loss to Kentucky, the loss to Kansas. Those were tough moments. And I forgot who it was, but somebody on the post-game show of the Houston game said all of our losses happened the same way, and they pretty much did, which is remarkable and sad. But that Arizona win on having lost those first 2 games was huge at the time as a momentum builder for this Duke team.
Well, one of the things about that comment, and I've seen it also, that the similarity in the Duke losses. But if you think about it, it hurt when Coop committed the 2 turnovers in that early Kentucky game. And they were turnovers. I am in the camp that says we're down 1 to Houston. The ball is in Cooper Flagg's hand. He didn't turn it over. I want 100 out of 100 times for Cooper Flagg to be taking that shot. And he came up short. And imagine, Jack, how history would be so different.
It's a very good.
If the ball goes in, they'll talk about the meltdown, but Cooper Flagg came to and rose to the occasion and scored, and the whole storyline would be completely different. But so he turned it over. He learned from that. But here, nothing. He played a phenomenal game against Houston, and he came up 2 inches short in having what would have been just a historic finish to the game. But sorry, but I had to look into this, and there had been a lot written about. Not a lot. Someone did a study of all the point game shots that Michael Jordan had, and how many did he hit? 40%.
Right. And I just think it's a great point. You know, even though I think what was similar was the score, the margin, the situation. But each time it really was a little bit different. You know, as you said, the Kentucky game, Coop's turnovers. The Kansas game, if I remember correctly, it was Kahn with the late turnover. And then you get to Clemson, and it's a turnover, but it's because he slipped. And so now you get to the Houston game. He gets off. It was contested, you know, but it wasn't a bad shot in considering the time and circumstances. And he's, as you said, a couple inches short. And also, to your point, that's who I want shooting the ball. The only other person would have been Kahn. That's it. Those are the two guys, and it would have to have been Kahn is wide open. They double Cooper. He kicks it to Kahn for an open look. Other than that, I think Cooper. It was the right play, the right moment. It just the result wasn't there, and that's okay. You know, I mean,
Could you imagine the haters? The guy turns the ball over at the end of a game. The guy slips at the end of the game. The guy comes up short on a shot at the end of the game. I don't know if I want to draft him.
Yeah. All right. We gotta try to move on from the Houston game, although it keeps coming back here. All right. Some more highlights for me. The Auburn win at home. We got. Remember what was happening going into that game, where there's a lot of talk about two things. Number one, Caleb Foster, we love you, but it was time, to come out of the starting lineup. Number two, Isaiah Evans, why isn't he playing? Why doesn't he get minutes in these games? Both of those things changed in that Auburn game, and both guys responded well. Foster, he had 11 points and 2 assists, most of which in the first half coming off the bench. And then we all know Isaiah Evans just went he just caught fire. And the 6 threes in the first half, the team did a great job of finding him. Although after the first 2 or 3 threes, it was hard for me to understand why Auburn, there's like the last couple, he was wide open. It was just hard to imagine how that kept happening, but it did, and he kept making them pay. And it was an awesome coming out party for Isaiah Evans in that game versus Auburn.
I'll go to, and this goes in the high category, highs. The absolute insane beatdown of Illinois up in New York. I know we're not going to do it in order, but for me, that was like, I don't know. I think we'll do okay. I didn't see a 40-point. I just didn't see it coming.
No, and I think it was like a week or so later they went out and beat Michigan by 20. So that was remarkable. Speaking of 40-point performances, Cooper's 42 points versus Notre Dame. And the thing is, like, okay, Notre Dame didn't have the best season, but they shot like 50 to 60% from 3 in that game against Duke. It was unbelievable. And he needed the rest of the Duke team wasn't having their best day. I think it was a day game, if I remember correctly. And they needed him to score 42. They only won that game by 7 or 8 points, and he did it all. They couldn't guard him, and it was just one of several times that he just decided Duke's not losing this game. You know, he's good. He just does whatever the team needed, and on that day, they needed him to score 42 points. Crazy.
All right. I thought that was great. So, but I'm gonna go next and give a shout out to Lawrence Friedman for the North Carolina Revenge Tour. He called it out early. We watched it unfold, and I got a little cute with, well, hold on a second, you know, this guy plays, he used to play for UNC, the game is in North Carolina, and I started adding to it, but every game that we needed to win, we won, and that was very satisfying, especially coming after the year before.
Certainly. I'm going to go to another Cooper Flagg moment. I mean, there's a bunch of them. It's hard not to. The dunk against Pittsburgh. Oh, listen, this guy, he's going to have an awesome NBA career, and I am sure he's going to have many great highlights in the NBA, but for his career highlight film, that play is going to be there. You know, that dunk. And it came on the back of him picking up his third foul, getting frustrated, getting a little bit angry, and just deciding, I'm going to take this ball. And then he just detonated, you know, and he took off from pretty far out, dunked on a 7-footer, and just, I mean, honestly, I don't know if it was that dunk, the overall, because Duke ended that game on like ridiculous run as well. But Pittsburgh basketball was never the same after that game. They started off the year, I think they had a similar record to Duke in like that game, like 12-2, 12-3, and they finished the rest of the season like below 500. They lost their first game in the ACC tournament. Now they've had a bunch of guys transfer out, so that game was there's a before Duke and after Duke for Pittsburgh, and I guess you could say before the Cooper Flagg dunk and after the dunk for them as well.
All right, I'll stay with the Cooper Flagg theme and go. There's only one way to do this one, so I got to try to change it a little bit here. But you know, the notion of me always saying that Cooper Flagg was not a celebrating guy. And I was, as the year progressed, completely wrong, because one of the best parts was, and it was so part of Coop's game that the commercial where he goes, bingo, and that's how he celebrates. 2 arms down. It's not, you know, the big muscles up. It's 2 arms down. How many times, Jack, did we see him do that from the floor, where he would be, you know, down after a dunk or something, and it was great.
How about the reverse layup against Houston, where he's laying on the ground? I still don't know how he did that.
That will go down well before your time as similar to the John Starks dunk in the when he was playing for the Knicks, when he reversed and put it over. Trying to remember who it was. It was 7-footer, and Starks is like 6'2", and he reversed under the basket and dunked it. People are still that will go in his highlight reel, how he somehow got underneath and had enough spin on the ball to put it in. It was another great Cooper Flagg highlight.
I'm going to mix in a low light here. The Georgia Tech game, even though we won the game in the ACC tournament, the way it started out, going 0 for 12, 0 for 13 from 3, then you start to feel like getting some momentum. Malik Brown goes down. And it's like, again, he hurts his shoulder. I felt horrible for him. And
this
then.
Is the Georgia Tech ACC game.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
And then Duke starts to get a little bit of momentum. Cooper Flagg goes down, turns his ankle. And I remember texting you and saying, just an absolute nightmare. Like the worst possible way to start a game, to lose your two best defenders, your best player, and not be able to hit a shot. And
well, right. And so that was when I said ACC game, I meant the ACC tourney game. And that at that moment in time, for all those lovely Duke haters out there, we didn't even know if we would, what team we would have heading into the ACC, heading into March Madness. That Coop hurt his ankle. It was 2 weeks. Didn't know the severity. Jalen Brunson just hurt his ankle. He was out for how long?
About a month.
Right? And the idea that he was back and able to play. And then even Malik Brown, who hurt his shoulder, which hurt us, because he never could play that you always point out it hurt us because it eliminated his tenacity for deflections, but that it also forced Gangba to step up, which was great, but not helpful in the way the Houston semifinal game played out.
Trying. All right. Well, the good news from this Duke team is most of the lowlights turned into highlights. And after that Georgia Tech start, they had a tremendous finish to that game, led by Con Knipple and Isaiah Evans for sure with their shooting. I mean, Con was just outstanding in that game. 28 points, 8 assists. And not only did they win that game, they beat North Carolina for a third time without Cooper Flagg and Malik Brown, those 2 games that he had come back from his injuries for against North Carolina, I am sure they're just sick of him because he just completely changed the games. And so, to beat North Carolina without those 2 guys and then beat Louisville, who had been on a roll, had won a number of games in a row. Yes, they had some injuries as well, but the way that Duke was able to compete, they were losing, I think, late in the first half or early in the second half, and then they had a good first segment of the second half, and they took the lead and never gave it back. And winning the ACC tournament without Cooper and Malik really showed me and said a lot to the rest of the country just how complete of a team this Duke team, it's hard for me to say was, but I guess it's over.
I know.
Was, yeah.
A low point was Caleb Foster. It was supposed to be his year to run the offense, and he didn't rise to the occasion, so much so that we were actually very early in saying this isn't going to work. And then the chorus of you got to do something with Caleb Foster became loud enough that Sion stepped in. A high point for Sion, low point for Caleb. But Caleb, a lot of credit to that young man, because there would be moments throughout the year that we needed him, that he did step up. There were times he didn't. It's very, very hard when you're the starter and you know you're only going to get one of the segments of 4 minutes to say, do I get the ball? Do I shoot? What do I do? But there were enough games in which his opportunity he took full advantage of. So that was a highlight to me, that he was able to go from the low to the high.
I agree. Like, first off, disclaimer, coming into the season, I thought this could be a big Caleb Foster year, and it didn't take me very long. Probably by the third game, I realized I was wrong. But I gotta say, as we do, we like to say the things we got wrong. We don't like to, but we say them, I think, is a better way of putting it.
We admit it.
We admit it, right? And had that one wrong. But to your point, you gotta give a lot of credit to him, because not only would a lot of guys like not do what he did in terms of buying into the team, having big moments towards the end of the season. In the North Carolina game, he played well. He played well multiple times in the NCAA tournament, in small stretches. And not only would a lot of guys not play well, but in today's modern college basketball landscape, if you go from I'm a starter in November to being a bench guy in December, a lot of guys say, all right, see ya, I'm entering the transfer portal in January. And there's several guys, forget the rest of college basketball, that I know of in the ACC alone that went from guys who are getting a lot of minutes to the bench, and just all of a sudden they were out for personal reasons, and several months later they're in the transfer portal. So I think it really says a lot about Foster's character as a person, and got to give credit to him for that. But it certainly was not the year that we thought he could have had.
No, and Duke players entering the transfer portal, for the most part, didn't work out.
Yes. Well, let's go through them. So
Jeremy Roach,
not great.
Mark Mitchell,
great.
He had really awesome. Really good moments.
Jalen Blakes had an awesome year for Stanford. Those are the two that worked out, Blakes and Mitchell. Then
right, Blakes' game at Cameron was not his high point.
It was a tough matchup, for Jalen Blakes, a guy who, he can hit the three, but it's not his strength. He's got to get inside, and he had to do it against an enormous Duke team with Kaman Malawach in the middle. Just a tough matchup. But to your point, Sean Stewart didn't have a great year at Ohio State. Jaden Schutt, okay, at Virginia, he played. So I guess for him it was an upgrade. TJ Power didn't even play for Virginia. There's one more guy. Who did I forget?
That's at least 6. You may have gotten to all 7, but
no, that's 6. Christian Reeves. That's number 7.
That's right. Right.
It was sort of a part of he was a fringe rotation guy for Clemson. I get similar to Schutt, it kind of worked out for him, but he's back in the portal, so who knows?
The thing we'll never know is the conversation that went on between Jon Scheyer and each player in projecting what your role will be, how many minutes will you get, what will you do, and the decision is based on that. And so the team you wind up with, when you went to the portal, if actually, Jack, when you went to the portal and team claims you, do you get to turn it down?
You choose your team.
Oh, so multiple teams could pick you, and you say no.
It's like recruiting.
But what happens if you go in the portal and only one team claims you?
Well, you better hope, and that's so one thing we had talked about off air was, I mentioned to you how many guys end up in the portal don't end up finding a new team. I don't think that's going to be the case for any of these former Duke guys, I guess I should say at this point. But TJ Power and Christian Reeves are probably looking at mid-majors, I would say, at this point. And the only other thing I would say about those 7 guys is I don't think any of them, maybe Mark Mitchell, but the other 6, I don't think they would have, maybe Roach, but he would have changed the dynamic of the team, having somebody who's not 6'5" in the rotation. Then they couldn't have done the whole thing about this is the tallest team in college basketball. They would have had to change the narrative. So it would have been really hard for those guys to find playing time with the caliber of players Duke had this past season.
And for Mark Mitchell, it would have had to be such a this is your best moment. This is the best segment for you to play in, because one of the things about his game as a 6'7",
6'9",
6'9", was, what was my nickname for him? Slash. I loved him not so much for putting up 3-pointers, which he was not great at, but he would get to the basket at 6'9" with aggression, which we always loved to see. In this changing age, I would look at other teams and go, why don't we have a player like that? And that's not the style that Duke plays, except with this year's team, they took advantage of Cooper Flagg, aggression to the basket.
Khan,
yes and no, but it's very different. It was either a 3-pointer or he would drive, and if he had it, yes, good aggression, but a lot of times part of the play was to go to the basket, stop, get the guy up in the air, draw the foul, where he's a 91% free throw shooter.
The only other thing before we move on Mr. Mitchell, I think a lot of his success with Missouri was he basically played a good chunk of his minutes as de facto center for them. And they had a bunch of shooters around him, and that wouldn't have been the case necessarily at Duke, because he would have had to play with, most likely, Kamon Malawach. I guess it could have worked, if Mal would have shot more threes. One of my regrets from the season. I wish he would have shot more threes. But circling back to the highlights, how about Tyrese Proctor going 13 of 16 from 3 in the first weekend of the NCAA tournament? That guy, I mean, he had this look on his face like he would not be denied. He had a laser focus to him. And it was a really impressive start to the NCAA tournament by Tyrese Proctor.
Low light.
Yeah.
Highlight, low light. Come on, Malawich, up chucking on the court.
That's a good one. Forgot about that. That's a good one, yeah. What game is that the NC State game? I think so.
And what I loved, what I felt so bad for him, but what I kept laughing at was, I don't remember that ever happening, and neither did obviously the Duke. It was a home game, right?
Yeah.
The number of personnel needed to clean up that was unbelievable. It was like a 5-minute stoppage. And, Jon Scheyer explained that he had guzzled a whole lot of Gatorade and, he just.
Well, the other part that Scheyer explained was that one of the managers who was part of the cleanup crew became sick themselves.
A lot of people do.
Yeah. So.
As long as we're on command, I think you brought to my attention something that may have had to do with his performance in the Houston game, and I think it's worth bringing up, and that is that before the game, he found out that he was on a list of South Sudanese people who could face deportation. And that was just unfair to this young man on so many levels. Did it play a role? We didn't think he had his best game. Certainly not rebounding. Against, we needed certainly some extra. Come on, Malowich. It's funny, Jack. I saw because you had got me attuned to what had happened to him. I caught on YouTube a video of him working out. This guy had so many other skills in working out and getting to the basket. And they use I don't know the name for it, but, to simulate someone hitting you. It's a pad that's about this long, and they use it to punch into you as you try to drive to the basket. This guy was dribbling the ball, which we know he can do really well. But the thing that we always said was, the other center, Gangba, was a better offensive player, showed more offensive skills. And when I was watching this YouTube video of Kaman, I was like, why didn't he do that in a game? He would be up. They had him starting from 15 feet out to aggressively go to the basket. And I was like, didn't know he could do that. So.
Yeah, it is. It's one of the questions. And I want to table that just until we get to the player grades, because there is something I want to talk about that specifically. A couple more. Let's go through a couple more before we get to the player grades. So from that game, that same game with the low light with Malowich, there is also the play where, I may have this mixed up in my mind, but I believe Proctor was falling out of bounds and Khan grabbed him by his ankle and saved him from going out of bounds. I talk about two things I've never seen before in a basketball game. In the same game, I believe. That was awesome.
Didn't even know it was legal. Grab a player by his jersey, pull him back in to save the ball from going out of bounds. I was like...
You grabbed him by his foot.
His foot, right. That's right.
It's kind of like the tush push, It's like it's illegal until they decide it's not, as far as I know. Okay, I got two more highlights. You got any more before I go?
I'm just riffing off of you.
All right. Speaking of Malowich, it was a collective defensive masterpiece against Alabama, but it was led by, technically it was okay. It was the guards, what they did against the Alabama threes, but as much as it was the guards, it was Malowich defending the paint. And not only defending the paint, defending on the perimeter as well. And it was a defensive masterpiece. An overall excellent game. He also had that, I think it was the Alabama game. Maybe it was the Arizona game. the name kind of blurred together, but I think it was the Alabama game where Khan threw him an alley-oop and he couldn't get to it, and he just like volleyball tapped it in for the and one. Man, that was a phenomenal performance by the team as a defense, but I thought Ma was awesome. And then my last one is Cooper's performance, specifically from the 7-minute 30-second mark in the first half until the 12-minute mark in the second half against Arizona, when he just put on the Superman cape and decided Duke's not losing this game. One of many times he did that throughout the season, but he did it all. He did it all in that stretch. He hit big shots. He hit the shot at the end of the half, which was insane.
A jump shot from almost the logo.
He had several alley-oops, including one where he was like falling to the floor. He even had the alley-oop that at the end of that game, which wasn't in that segment, that Mal missed, but he found him with like 1 second left on the shot clock, and to have the presence of mind to even throw that pass, talk about like basketball savant. Just like the guy was unbelievable, but that stretch where he just took over the game, that was Cooper Flagg at his best, and boy was he a lot of fun to watch at Duke.
So I got one more highlight, and I'm going back to the Illinois game in the final 2 minutes. Spencer Hubbard. We'll talk more about Spencer later, but a 3-pointer, and was it a 2-point basket or 2 foul shots? I don't remember, but he finished with 5 points. And even in Cameron North, the place went crazy. Couldn't be happier.
Real excited for Spencer. He got a lot of playing time this year. It's good to be, it was a combination of this great Duke team and this horrible ACC, and led to a lot more Spencer Hubbard minutes than probably got more playing time this year than in the rest of his years combined. All right, let's go through some grades. I don't think we could start this with anybody else. It has to be Cooper Flagg, and this is pretty easy. This is an A+. That guy came in with immense expectations and somehow exceeded them all, and was a joy to watch the whole season. He does literally everything on a basketball court. There's nothing he can't do. And if there's something you think he can't do, just wait a couple months. He'll be able to do it. And just a joy to watch.
And I don't know that we'll get to experience that joy once he's in the NBA. I mean, yes, you get, a lot of his games will be picked up by ESPN because they'll want to showcase it. Just the same way Michael Jordan after a couple of years, or LeBron. Okay. But I'm going to actually say that the stat line in the loss to Houston was incredible, multi-dimensional in terms of points, rebounds, assists, steals, blocks, overall court presence. I mean, that's what I meant earlier when I said, if that last shot goes in, it's not a story about he, missed, turnovers in the Kentucky game, or he slips, Who knows why he slipped? He never said it was a slippery floor or something. He slipped. It happens. He hits that shot. It is the icing on the cake. It is the point on the letter I for what was a phenomenal game. And that's truly what I wish they had written about. It wasn't that Cooper Flag contributed 28 points or whatever it was. It's like it was everywhere. I don't know, other than that last moment, what else we wanted from him.
One more thing, kind of going back through those final 10 minutes. There was also 2 shots that he had that were in and out. And if they would have happened to fall, it's a different story. All right.
So I agree, A+.
All right. Now this one you got to give your grade first. Kaan Knueppel. Where'd you grade him?
A very solid A, but he's not an A+. There's only one guy in that A+ category. And a couple of games where he didn't have the offensive skills to lead the team on nights that other people weren't. I might have gone to an A-, but that wouldn't be fair for his value in the final run in the ACC tournament, March Madness. He had a very good game against Houston, although that 10-minute period where something wasn't working for us. So, but overall an A.
I gave him an A+ as well. And part of the reason I did so is kind of the opposite of Cooper, where Cooper came in with a ton of expectations and he really exceeded them. I don't think, from what I remember, anybody was talking about Kaan Knueppel as a one and done freshman, let alone a guy who is the second best player on a top 4 team at worst in the country. And while I agree with you, there were moments, especially early on in the season, where he didn't perform as well as we may have hoped. I thought, really, for me, there's a clear line of demarcation, which is the Virginia game that I happened to see him live. From that point on, I thought he was just incredible, the rest of the season, and just did whatever the team needed. The stretch in the ACC tournament without Cooper, he was amazing. He's had a slow start to the NCAA tournament, kind of adjusting to life, back playing with Flag, and then the last 2 games with Alabama and Houston, the biggest games of the year, he played really well. And I just thought he had an outstanding season for Duke.
Okay.
Next, Khaman Maluach, the big man from South Sudan. I gave him an A-. And part of the reason I gave him an A- is what you were talking about. I guess it was about 10 minutes ago now, in terms of the other skills. I haven't watched him on YouTube. I know at the start of the season, a lot of people, I had said that I thought Malik may start at center and that Khaman would work his way in. And a lot of people were really upset at me for saying that. And while Maluach he was the starter, Malik played more minutes at the start of the season. And then as the year went on, that kind of flipped. They were even for a bit, and then Miles started playing more, in part because of Malik's injuries, in fairness. But I did see Maluach for South Sudan, and he showed off an ability to shoot a mid-range jumper, a tough 2, a 3-pointer, and we just didn't see that consistently throughout the year. And there were times outside of the Houston game where he didn't rebound the ball as well as we would hope for a guy of his caliber. So I think A minus with his lob threat, with his defense, with his not just ability to defend the rim, but guard on the perimeter. He was a really important part of Duke having what was one of the best defenses in the country.
So in the way that you described Khan, and like to some degree, very, very valid point. Where did this guy come from? How was he, even the Duke coaching staff was saying during the early practices, this guy is defying our expectation. I'm going to give the big guy, Mal, a solid A. Hasn't been playing the game that long, 5 years maybe. His footwork, and you brought up a really good point, saying maybe all the years of playing soccer contributed to his ability to aggressively guard the perimeter. And I'm going to go to that it was very hard to thread the needle for how he was going to fit in on offense with a team that became so loaded. And we'll get to Proctor later. And like, where does he fit in? And so the lob threat was his best weapon and used consistently. He had to get himself in position. Yes, and in some nights he was taller. And we used to say in our analysis that there was an opportunity for that weapon to be brought to bear. But I think overall, a solid A, and the trajectory for him is very high, and that I think he's going to have a very good NBA career.
I do too. I think the sky's the limit for Kamlan Malawach. All right, next up, you go first here. Sion James.
A minus. The guy, and only an A other. Why a minus? Because there were some nights I wish he'd given us more. But starting out as a bench player and then assuming the role of the point guard and providing stability, I always was so comfortable when he was bringing the ball up and starting the offense. Yes, frequently his job was to bring it up and give it to Coop, who would then, play point forward. But overall, his defense, his aggression, all the adjectives about him looking like a fullback. His presence on the court was, I bet, at times even intimidating to certain matchups and players. So, but just the minus is because there were a couple of nights where I needed him to do more.
Yep, I same grade, A minus, and I hate to say it, but one of those moments was obviously the end of the Houston game, and talk about him as a stabilizer, and one of the things that's most interesting to me is that the narrative coming out from that game was you can't win with freshmen, but it wasn't the freshmen who had difficulty down the stretch really for Duke. But Sion James had an outstanding season for Duke. To your point, had started the year coming off the bench, becomes a stabilizer, helps Duke not only with his ability to guard on the perimeter, but he helped Duke because of his size and willingness to guard multiple positions have a defense where, okay, Milovac can guard your point guard on the perimeter, but why can't you just dump it off to your big guy down low? Well, because Sion James is going to make it tough for your big guy to score inside, and he was such a important factor for them defensively, and then offensively he would hit timely threes. He would attack the basket. He just had an awesome season for Duke, and it'd be really unfair to him to really dock him, for a couple of bad moments. So I think A- is appropriate. All right, next up, I don't know if you've caught my theme here, but these are guys who I think are definitely gone, and then we're gonna get to the guys who might be back, and then the guys who I think will be back. So next up for me is Mason Gillis, who I'm really waffling on my grade here. To be perfectly honest with you guys, I'm gonna go with a B. I'm gonna go with a B for Mason Gillis, and I think similarly to Sion, he was a stabilizer for this team, a really important veteran presence. He had big moments. The Wake Forest game comes to mind, the one at Wake Forest, the game at Louisville, and I think there was a couple of more games. I thought he gave us good minutes when he got to play against Houston. There's a couple of more that I'm forgetting of. Maybe one of the games in the ACC tournament, I think he played well. But the reason I gave him a B is the number one skill that Mason Gillis had that he brought to Duke was his three-point shooting. He didn't have a great shooting year. He was somewhere in the mid to low 30s percentage-wise. And this is what it is. And I don't think that's all on him. I think he played far less minutes than he used to play at Purdue. So I think it was harder, especially at the start of the season. I would imagine, because he started off the year in the low 20s, so I imagine the back part of the year he was back to shooting 40%, but he just didn't shoot as well as I think I hoped he would for this Duke team. But his veteran stabilizing presence was really important for a young Duke team.
Don't have much to add to that analysis. I've got him at a B as well. That I wanted more. I just wanted more. Though the three stabilizers, Sion, Mason, Malik, it was a well put together team. So it's a B, but it's not like a dismissive B, like, you just didn't really. It's a solid B, where if anything, my grading pen might have been saying B+, but I think in light of other people's performance, he's a B.
Next up, Tyrese Proctor. Where do you grade him?
I'm not giving anyone another A+, as you could see, when I talked about Khan. A solid A. And I really do see that he could have an NBA career that started like Jared McCain. I really think that his defense was, at times when we said we're not getting the offense, and then we looked carefully and we said he's guarding the toughest player on the other team and he's holding him to below his average. The number of times he did that, he's a solid A, and I just won't. I won't go to an A+ because that's Cooper level. So
that's fair. I have it an A- only because there were a few times throughout the season where when Duke needed him most, he wasn't able to perform. But I'm with you, and so much so that on one of the more recent ESPN like mock draft kind of articles. They talked when Tyrese was going crazy from three in the first weekend of the NCAA tournament. One of the critiques was, it's great that he's shooting as well as he is, but what else does he offer? He's not, and they said he's not much of a defender. And that threw me for a loop because I think it was a classic case of, yes, he doesn't get a ton of steals. I think he averaged 0.8 steals per game. But if you watch him play, you see the impact he has on the opposing best player. He didn't have his best defensive game against Houston, especially with what Cryer was able to do. But
although I will not that we're talking about Houston, the first half, I thought he was pretty good on his defense. It was the second half that I really do think he let us down a bit.
Yeah, but overall, a much improved Tyrese Proctor from his first 2 years in terms of consistency and overall confidence. I think he really took a major step forward this past season. Next up for me is Malik Brown. And he was one of my favorite players on this team because every time he was on the court, he would do, in a similar but different way to Cooper Flack, he would do something where I would just kind of laugh and be like, how did he do that? How did he get that deflection? How did he get that steal? How did he block that shot? And then
how did he get 2 3-pointers?
2 3-pointers. His passing ability. This may not even be fair to Malik Brown. I gave him an A-, and it's only because he missed however many games it ended up being, somewhere around 8 to 10 games. So I felt like I had to. It's not his fault, but I had to dock him a little bit from an availability standpoint. But and then there was a couple of games, and it could have been because of the injury, especially when he came. I think his first injury was like I don't even remember what it was, but before the shoulder injury, there was another injury. And when he came back from that, he didn't quite look like himself for a few game stretch until he hurt his shoulder in that Virginia game. So I just felt like A- was fair. But yeah, I'm glad you brought up those 2 threes. Those were awesome.
I'm not going to dock him based on his injuries because it's part of the game. It may be that if he never played again, you might have said incomplete.
Sure.
To something like that. I loved just about every minute that he was on the court. I thought that when he was playing center and splitting the minutes with Mal, that I just didn't know what would happen next, but I generally felt it would be good. That we had television announcers deciding that deflections is now a stat we're going to talk about, even though, as Duke followers, we were talking about it. And then all of a sudden, the mainstream announcers were going like, the number of deflections this guy has is like, there's no one even close to this. And then when he hits the 3-pointers and I decide, does he have a 3-point shot and he just doesn't take it? I mean, I know he was pretty much wide open, but you still got to knock it down. So I think he was a joy. And that is truly a guy that didn't celebrate. That is a guy. Yep. That is a guy that let his deflections and his work on the court do his talking. So, hey,
he's like, yeah. Listen, I like I said, it's probably a bit unfair of me to dock him for that, but I did, so I have to own it. And yeah, he's like Kawhi-like with his lack of expression, good or bad. You have no idea if he just, had a 3-steal, 5 assist, 2-point, 2-block game, or he had nothing. His face would be the same. All right, next up for you, Caleb Foster.
I certainly was singing his praises with how, singing his praises for what he did. And I will say that the expectation level was so high that the amount of good moments versus the amount of bad moments, and yes, starter, bench player, B minus.
I gave C. Foss a C plus.
Yeah.
And I think it was a C plus because of how he ended the year. Like I thought he ended strong, and depending on we gotta see. There's gonna be a lot of news, I suspect, over the next couple of weeks. Who comes back and who doesn't. He will have to figure out whether he will have a role for Duke next season, or if not, if it's time for him to move on. But I think with the way he finished the season, if there's an opportunity for him to get minutes, I would love to have him back. Next up, Isaiah Evans, who had a very, very interesting season. You know, didn't play, then plays and has an outstanding game against Auburn. Didn't play because of his defense. I thought his defense got much better as the year went on. The one thing that didn't get better, though, I would say was his shot selection, which was, I think, part of the reason he didn't play a ton down the stretch, although I think it would have been good to get him some more minutes. I ended up going with a B for Isaiah, B minus for Isaiah Evans, in part because I think he was the third highest rated recruit. There was a ton of, kind of the opposite of Con Knippel. There was a ton of buzz and hype about Isaiah Evans coming into this season, and similar to Foster, though, got to give him a lot of credit for how he handled his playing time being a bit of a roller coaster, and he just in understanding what he needed to do to get more playing time with his defense and improving there, which he did. I have to give him a lot of credit. And again, similar to Foster, depending on who decides to come back and what he ends up deciding, because I think he's probably an early second-round pick at this point. Would love to have him back on Duke next season in a bigger role.
Right. So I'm going with the C plus here because I think he lived off of the reputation of the Auburn game. And that the hype was so strong, but then we kept expecting, maybe unrealistically, that he'd live up to that throughout the season, and he did not, in my mind. Would I like him back? Absolutely. Do I think he, has the opportunity to improve on defense and the opportunity to score more depending on just who's on the team? But tough spot, C plus.
Yeah, there was flashes after the Auburn game. Thinking of the Virginia game, which I was at. He had an awesome game in that one, and then also in the ACC tournament against Georgia Tech. But too few of them after that Auburn explosion. All right, you're up next here with Patrick Gangba.
Work in progress is the best thing I could say. He doesn't get a ton of minutes, liked his minutes. So if I graded him, compared to everybody else, Pat played well in his things. He'd get a B for me. I wanted more, but there is a part of me that would also say it was incomplete because he was so limited in his time, although it stepped up when Malik Brown was injured, and he stepped up as well. So I'm comfortable with the B. It's just, not a tremendous amount of playing time.
I agree. Same grade from me. B. He had the 12 points against North Carolina in the ACC semifinal. He had his best performance of the season against Mount St. Mary's the first round of the tournament with 9 points, 8 rebounds, 2 assists, 3 blocks, and a steal. I would really love to have Gangba back next season as part of a center rotation, either with Malik Brown or with Malik Brown as part of that rotation. Maybe Malik spends some more time at the 4. But I'm very curious to see what happens with Gangba.
Well, I'd like to see him in the front line with him at center with the big Boozer at one forward and you know who at the other forward. But I'm in dream world.
You are.
That is my, I mean, Gangba could, with the size of Boozer, Gangba should be able to be a nice backup in, going down low and assuming the role that Mal played, but even more of an offensive threat. So,
all right, next up, Darren Harris. I gave him an incomplete. He didn't get enough playing time. He had his best moments in that Mount St. Mary's first round game. He had 7 points, 4 rebounds, but he just didn't get enough playing time to fairly grade. Darren Harris, what would you say? Oh. And we lost him. All right. I'm going to, I guess, wrap this up here for you guys. Spencer Hubbard, gave him an A. Great final season of Spen Hub. Had a number of big buckets and big moments. And similar to the next guy, Neil Begovic, both guys, Begovic had some nice moments as well, both at Madison Square Garden and in the NCAA tournament. And they both were credited a lot by different players throughout the season in post-game interviews for how much they helped them off the court and in practice. So big shout out to those two guys for what they did in the locker room. All right, last couple of grades here are going to be for the coaches and our GM. So our GM, Rachel Baker, gave her an A. She's definitely part of this roster construction with what she does with NIL. And it was an awesome team, and she definitely was a big part of helping that be orchestrated. Jay Lucas, I know we miss him. He left us a little bit early, understandably so. I get the situation. And for Mr. Lucas, because he not only was the defensive coordinator, was the lead recruiter for a lot of these freshmen, he gave him an A-. And then lastly, Coach Scheyer, who I gave an A- as well. I thought he had an outstanding season overall. Just unfortunately with the way it finished, some things could have gone differently. I think he gets docked a little bit for that, but overall an awesome season and an awesome season with all of you guys. Please subscribe to the channel, like this video. We'll have this obviously available on podcasts as well. We're going to be looking to do some interviews over the summer, some different things throughout the rest of the spring, summer, and then lead into next year's college basketball season. So please stay plugged in here with us at Talking Ball. And with that, this is a wrap on the Duke basketball 2024-25 season. Until next time, peace.